Right, so private prisons are raking in huge profits despite the bad economy. But the largest private prison company in this country isn't just going to sit back and let the markets do its thing. Like any smart business, the Corrections Corporation of America is actively courting investors. Keeping people locked up doesn't come cheap. So at a time when states are struggling with their budget shortfalls, the CCA is urging them to privatize. In January, the Wall Street giant sent a letter to 48 states with a sales pitch that went something like this. We're going to buy your prison now, and if you keep it mostly full, we'll make sure that we're going to take care of it. So make sure that the prison population doesn't dip below 90%, and the CCA will take care of all of your incarceration needs. And now there's this. A bizarre PowerPoint presentation explaining why the CCA is a, quote, unique investment opportunity for all. Among the highlights, private prisons are recession-resistant, they're a large and an under-penetrated market. You see, with just 10% of prisons being private, the growth opportunity there is huge. And with a virtual monopoly on the industry, the CCA doesn't have to worry about competitors getting in the way. And should the economy turn around, don't worry, good times mean higher incarceration rates. And that, of course, means more profits for everyone. Well, Joe Weisenthal at the Business Insider brought this lovely presentation to light, so let's bring him into that conversation. Joe, I have to start off by asking, this is such an amazing investment opportunity. How many shares did you buy after reading that presentation?
I don't own any of them.
But let's go through this. I mean, it does sound like a wise business investment, but it is a little bit bizarre considering what the product is here. Walk us through, I guess, some of your impressions as you were reading this investment pitch.
Well, I guess the weird part to me is how it's presented by the company presented by the company as being totally normal. I mean, it's very strange, this company that there exists a business where you can make a lot of money incarcerating people, keeping people in cages. And I'm not like squeamish. I understand that we have prisons in society and that they have to be there and that some people ought to be in prison. And so I'm not some idealist that would like to see prisons abolished or anything. But it still seems strange to me. So then when you see these presentations and these investment pitches that basically talk about the business like any other business, I mean, it's like, Coca-Cola would advertise that even in the downturn. Or let's say a toothpaste company might advertise that in the downturn, people still have to buy toothpaste, so it's a good recession-proof industry. And then here you have this company saying, even in a downturn, the prison business never stops booming, as if it's just this totally normal business. And it obviously isn't. And then I think beyond that, the part that disturbs me is the incentives for the prison industry to lobby for more incarceration. The idea that it becomes in their best interest to see longer sentences, prison sentences handed out for more crimes. It's all, it's all pretty strange and unlike pretty much anything else you'll see in a publicly traded company.
Right, and that's the whole sort of crux on it, because you're tying profits to the outcome of incarceration rates. And, I mean, I'm not one to pass judgment on what individuals do with their money, but it seems to me that the bigger problem you get into here is when you apply this to states, right? Because states are not only going to be financially vested in keeping these private firms profitable in order to keep their rates low, but states also control policy to some degree. And, I mean, could there be a conflict of interest where, for example, more folks will end up going to prison, essentially, in order to stay true to these deals?
It seems absolutely like there's a potential for a conflict of interest, or just basically the interests of the company not being in the same interest as society that may not want such a high degree of incarceration, or may prefer a society in which we aim to rehabilitate prisoners faster, and so on. So there's all kinds of things. And then, there are questions about, in this case, prison companies offering to buy existing prisons, and you have to wonder whether the state is actually saving money in the long term, or whether it's just they can't, due to budget constraints, they can't resist the one-time lump sum of payment when they sell the prison. So there are all kinds of strange issues involved in this business.
Right, and of course in the state issue, in order to, they'll have a mandate to keep the prison 90% full. So it's not like,
Right.
a shoe company where you have to make enough shoes to keep the factory operating at 90%. We're talking about criminals here. So if the rates, God forbid, are low, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't really know what would happen.
And one thing, One thing also to point out is it's not just prisons that end up having an incentive. The prison guard union in California is famously powerful for having, and for having supported a lot of the same things that the private prisons have in terms of increased incarceration and increased penalties for criminals. So basically, any group that benefits from more people in prison will will try and use organized power and expand the prison society. So it's not just private prisons, but obviously it's they're the most glaring example of it these days.
And one of the things I had to ask you about is their sales pitch said that, basically if the economy gets better, the prison population increases. Why is that? What's the fiscal logic there?
Yeah, this was interesting that I hadn't realized before, but it makes sense. So when the economy is weak, states pare back on how much they spend on prisons. So they'll parole people sooner. That makes sense, save money. They'll do everything they can to squeeze pennies. But then rather than that being the new bar, then apparently they really make up for lost time. So what the Corrections Corp of America was saying is that after these recession periods, even if growth slows a little bit, maybe prison population doesn't grow that much, that what they've seen in past recessions is that in the years afterwards, the states play catch up and make up for the lost time, so that in the end, the recessions don't really hurt. They just kind of pause it, but then they make it back on the other side. It's kind of fascinating.
Well, it's a really bizarre trend, but, in these tough times, I guess we should be thankful when any business is doing well. Moral issues, again, again aside. But you know what, my last question.
Especially a real estate business.
Especially the real estate business, exactly. But, by that fiscal logic, I mean, why not think bigger than just the United States of America, right? I mean, it costs, what, I think $800,000 to house a detainee at Guantanamo Bay. The war on terror isn't going away anytime soon. What's your investment advice should the CCA get into the whole indefinite detention business?
Well, they actually talked about, not Guantanamo specifically, but they talk about new opportunities. So they talk about immigrant detainees as being a new untapped market that they're not in at all. But yeah, I mean, it does seem like there's a big trend between sort of the private armies, the Blackwater type companies, just in general sort of the military and defense state and the military and security state being privatized seems to be probably a trend that's only going to grow. Well,
I guess the market's always right, consequences aside. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. That was Joe Weisenthal, the deputy editor for the Business Insider.